I love music. It's a part of who I am, and I find it as a great way to express myself and as a good outlet to release my emotions. These are my thoughts on what it's like to be a multi-instrumentalist. So before we start with anything, I have to mention the instruments that I play. I know how to play 5 instruments, but I really only play 3 most of the time. Alto sax, guitar, and drums. This to me is a pretty diverse selection of instruments. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on each instrument and my thoughts on them. I feel like that deserves its own separate video and just detracts from the point of this video. Also, do not take my word as gospel. These are just my thoughts and opinions on what it's like, and this is by no means a fact. I just wanted to get that out of the way first before we continue with anything else. First off, playing multiple instruments on a regular basis does kind of complicate things for your schedule. You have to find time for each instrument, and if you're a student like me, for example, that can be quite hard. Another thing about playing 3 instruments regularly is that you don't really know what you want to play in the future. I mean, for me example, I obviously have my preferences. I always go saxophone first because that's the instrument that I've played the most and it's my first instrument and I don't see myself giving that up. And then I do drums as a secondary, and then guitar for fun metal things. Shout out Nick Nocturnal, by the way. But at the same time, it also kind of gives you a bit of a headache when you really want to like lock in on one instrument. Like, I've had multiple times where I'm just sitting around and I'm just thinking, oh no, wait, okay, wait, I just need to focus on alto saxophone. Wait, no, but like, what about my guitar? No, what about my drums? Like, stuff like that. It kind of leaves you in an existential crisis in a way. But in all seriousness though, I'm still young, and I think this is something that future me will handle eventually, someday. But let's talk about some more positive things about playing multiple instruments. For starters, it expands your musical brain. Every instrument has their own unique feel. They have their own sound, they have their own techniques, all that stuff. And just learning another instrument alone can already boost your creativity because it gives you a second lens. It's like unlocking a new skill set where not everything translates over to that, but there are still similarities between one skill set and another's that you can often transfer them. And the same thing goes for musical instruments. Yeah, each instrument is unique, especially when you're jumping from musical families, but there are still some cool things and similarities that you can find when you're learning a new instrument that you can apply, and it overall just makes you understand music better, in my opinion. Now, another thing that I found with learning more instruments is that it encourages you to try different things. Some instruments fit into other genres and some may not, but what I mean by this is, well, for example, I picked up sax, guitar, and drums for completely different reasons. I mostly picked up sax because, well, I was a young kid at the time when I started playing, and I didn't really know, but I mostly played jazz on there, and with guitar and drums, I usually just play heavy metal all the time because I'm a metalhead. Quite frankly, I feel like playing jazz on both of those instruments, while definitely possible, is not my thing. Now, my personal experience may not be the best example of this, but I feel that the best way to look at this is again with the skill set analogy. Since each instrument has their own sound, whenever you want to go in, let's say, a different musical direction, sometimes the best way to do that is simply playing another instrument. And once again, this concept is tied to the whole idea that when you play other instruments, you expand your musical creativity and your musical brain. And lastly, in my experience, being a multi-instrumentalist helps you socially. Now, I feel like generally when it comes to playing music, this is kind of the case to an extent. There's always people who appreciate music. Honestly, you do not have to be a multi-instrumentalist to be better off socially. This is just my experience, and this may not always work. But I feel like when you play more instruments, you unlock yourself to more social environments. A personal example of this is playing sax has allowed me to play in bars with a band, and I also go to jazz school, and there's so many awesome people out there, but playing drums has also opened me up to meeting some percussionists and meeting even more awesome people, and the same thing goes with guitar, albeit a bit less. Playing more instruments just opens up social opportunities for you. And once again, while this may not apply to everyone, and this is by no means a fact, it's another thing that I feel gets kind of overlooked. But that's all I have for today. Playing 3 instruments on a regular basis is definitely not easy, especially when you have to keep up with the practice. But the main purpose of this video was I just wanted to touch on this subject, and I feel like this is something that hasn't really been talked about on YouTube. But those are my thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about this, and I'll see you next time.